Hey, what's up, everybody? BDL 44 coming at you with another video. All right. So, although I'm sitting on the pot, I'm not actually sitting on the pot, if anybody's wondering. I'm just having a seat in my bathroom. So, um, this is a situation where, honestly, I'm looking at the NBA. And obviously, the Willie Cauley-Stein move has got me hyped up that something could possibly take place, but there's been no news since. But in the NBA, as of right now, the thing that I'm thinking about is something I saw in the comments section of a video I watched, and that was that now the Nets are coming up on training camp, and it's almost time to start answering questions about what's going on with the team. And that's something that I don't think I've talked too much about it at all, which is how much of a distraction this could potentially be for the team. Um, and going forward, not only for the Nets, but also the Lakers in regards to Russell Westbrook. Um, Now, I would say the same thing about Donovan Mitchell, but Utah, I just don't think, it's not the same thing. Nobody's anticipating his exit, so to speak, or rather looking forward to it. I don't imagine in Utah. So if for some reason a trade doesn't get done there, I'm sure the Utah fans are pretty happy. Um, and I know Donovan probably wants to go to New York, but I really think if for some reason Danny Ainge doesn't trade him, it's probably better for him to be built around in Utah. And if they get Victor Wembanyama, he might be in a position to really contend yet again very soon. So I don't think that's crazy. They're in a firm position to get a top 3 pick, as well as anybody, anyways. Looking at the early projections of things. So who knows? Who knows how that's going to go? But I know Danny Ainge would love to get his hands on a lot more picks, and so that's going to be the plan in my mind. But again, we start talking about these teams that are going to be dealing with the distraction aspects of things. The Brooklyn Nets probably at the top of the list, because at least with the Lakers, we know at the end of the day, Russell Westbrook's situation is as it is. He signed his extension, or rather signed his opt-in, and now will be on the team until we can get him off of it for the remainder of the season. After that, $47 million of cap space comes to us or to whoever obtains the contract, and that is just the end of it. Now, Kyrie, KD, that situation obviously is much different because of all of this controversy surrounding it, to say the least. So I'm thinking Ben Simmons is going to be forced to answer questions. Patty Mills, all those guys, Royce O'Neal, anybody on the team that's expected to suit up, Seth Curry, Joe Harris, they're all going to be asked to make some sense of all of this repeatedly. And I just think if you're Sean Marks, you're Joe Tsai, you got all this surrounding your organization, if there's a way you can get a deal done before that happens, I see a whole lot of benefit to that. A whole lot. Maybe not to the extent where you accept a deal that is no good, but you work diligently to make that your deadline, I guess is what you say. You want to make sure this deal gets done before then, if it's within your control to do so. Because the distraction level is one thing, but then you start letting the season start, and then you got to start hearing about, the big dogs as they come back. And when I say the big dogs, I mean the main guys, Stephen A, Skip, when they come back ready for the fall. And if this situation is not intact by the time they get back on their, from their summer hiatus or whatever, it's going to be a relentless, nauseating situation for the teams, the Lakers and the Nets particularly, to deal with in their respective situations. It's going to be a challenge to get everybody on the same page. We remember how it was last year in Philadelphia with the Ben Simmons situation. Of course, Seth Curry was a part of that as well. But it just is one of those situations where you just really would love for this to not be a part of your situation come training camp. Also, as I look around at these teams, I'm pretty certain that some of them can get away with starting the season without making any moves just fine. So, in fact, it's a lot of teams that I think will be okay if nothing happens. But as we've stated, there are a couple teams, including the Lakers, that just probably should not start the season this way. And as I said, I think Adam Silver is going to step in eventually and put an end to the nonsense so that guys can you know, can be in situations that help them win. I think that's coming sooner than later, actually, because of the presence of the distractions that we're talking about. I think Adam Silver could potentially step in soon and just make it clear that something is going to take place, um, if he has to force it to happen himself. Um, Now that the Chris Paul situation with the Lakers and the Hornets back in the day was really really unique because the Hornets at the time were owned by the league. It was a weird little situation where the team was trying to find a seller, um, a buyer, and couldn't find one or was in between. And I don't know how that worked, but for whatever reason, the NBA, for an interim basis, for about a good 16 months or something like that, literally had possession of the team themselves. And because of it, were able to veto trades that were agreed upon, and of course, that's why they were able to step in. It's the only reason why they were able to. Uh, the only reason why the commissioner was able, David Stern was able to step in and stop the trade. Now, I still to this day don't think that was the worst trade in the world for the Hornets in return. I mean, they got Pau Gasol, Lamar Odom. Those are some good players that we were going to be sending to the Hornets, but all in all, it got vetoed, and now we're in a space where I could totally see the commissioner stepping in to a lesser degree to make this trade take place, or try to mediate the situation so that there's another voice in the room for the situation. Because at the end of the day, I'm gonna be honest. In my point of view, I think this situation probably should be addressed. You don't take it out of the Nets' hands right now, but you let them have a few more weeks, and if they can't get anything going, you do have to step in. If you're Adam Silver, you really don't want this to drag out like last year's Ben Simmons situation. You just don't want that, because unfortunately, Ben Simmons is a star. He's a really great player. We know his game. But it's not the same as Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is a different beast. Skip Bayless believes Kevin Durant is the best player in the world. You know what I mean? Like, Giannis is in that mix. Obviously, LeBron's in that mix. Jokic, 2 MVPs. But Kevin Durant is up there in that category. Steph Curry. You got to respect the level he's on and why it's important that he not be the focal point of this holdout. Simple as that. You've never seen a player this big hold out. Not in the NBA. No. Never. Not even nothing like this. So, and I do believe he's going to hold out. I've been telling you guys, I'm not of the mindset that KD is going to just suit up for the Nets. And, I think there are certain things that can happen that can get us to a place where he may consider, right? There are things that can happen. But as far as things staying the way they are right now and then him putting on the uniform, I don't see that in any way, shape, or form. I wouldn't bet a quarter on that. Not one single coin. Hell no. I think the man's going to hold out. I think he's going to hold out for an extended period of time. And a lot of things would have to happen in order to get him back on the court once that holdout begins. And so I just think if you're Adam Silver, you would rather Joe Tsai not be the decision maker in the situation. If I'm being completely honest with you, he's a new owner. He's a lot to learn about everything. And this is too big of a decision, in my opinion, for one owner to be responsible for. I know he's responsible for his team, but the conglomerate that is the league is also responsible for itself as a whole. And this is KD is too big of a player for this problem. He's just too big of a player for this problem. And I get it. The media, this is another thing. And I'm going to say this and be a part of it. But we instigate. That's the truth. We make situations worse. Granted, if we weren't here and to speak about it, it wouldn't raise awareness about the sport, blah, blah, blah. I understand the importance of what it is that we do, and I love what it is that I do. But I speak truth to all of it when I say, without the presence of the speaking heads, talking heads, a lot of this stuff is not as intense behind the scenes. The presence of the pressure just isn't there. Yeah, you got the problems, but there's no one in the middle saying what you gonna do, what you gonna do. You gonna let them talk like this, you gonna let them talk like that. Look at you and your weaknesses. Like, that is an antagonist that hangs over a problem that otherwise needs focus. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I don't know that it's not a distraction that distorts the moves themselves. You know what I mean? And I get it. The media can be a fantastic tool as well in negotiations. And I certainly can appreciate how certain entities are able to maneuver moves by way of manipulating the media. I think it's a great strategy. But when you start looking at what the Nets are dealing with, and then you consider the pressures that are placed upon them to get it right or what have you, it would just be best if it wasn't so much focus on the problem by those who look to benefit from colorful language about describing the problem. You know what I mean? Like, we'll colorfully paint a picture that makes it so that not necessarily the truth is understood, but that a narrative is believed, and that, I think, is really toxic as it pertains to minds trying to maneuver within these environments. And I just don't. I would obviously tell all professionals to stay away from the media, and don't listen to that stuff, obviously. But even more so, it's not just about staying away from it. Yes, you as an individual may be able to stay away from it, but from the field itself, it's not necessarily the discipline. And so moves are still going to be affected by those pressures in various places. Even if it's not you, somebody's affected. They're affected, and they may be as well. And that just makes for a very, very volatile trading environment. So, as I've been talking about the system of the NBA and how it operates, I do not have solutions. I don't offer a better system, unfortunately, but I do know the one that we have just simply needs to be tweaked a lot better so that it can fit today's player. And as I continue to speak about this, I will just honestly say I don't think that people are trying their best to be insubordinate because they weren't raised right or something like that. I think that's the narrative that people are buying. KD wasn't raised right, Kyrie wasn't raised right. That's why they're being insubordinate, because they don't respect it. They're spoiled, blah, blah, blah. I don't think in the presence of leverage you can look at everything that there is to see and come to that conclusion. When you consider what it is that's actually being spoken of in regards to KD and what it is he's asking for. He's asking to be treated like a superstar is supposed to be treated in the NBA by their team. If you're at his level, there are certain things that are going to be expected because other guys at that level get those things. And see, this is what I was talking about in regards to Joe Tsai understanding more. There's more to understand. You have an obligation as an owner to keep those expectations across the board as fair as possible. I'm not saying you got to put video games on the plane like they did in Dallas when Dirk was there, but you do have to accommodate players in such a way that's comparable to the rest of the field. I can't come to Brooklyn as KD and not get the same respect that I would get everywhere else. It's basically what KD's got going on right now. That's what it looks like the situation is to me. He's not getting the respect that he feels he deserves as a super Hall of Fame NBA champion MVP player. You know, he wanted Kyrie to be signed. That was part of what it is. That's part of what it is. Because you look around, like we always bring up the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard is the best example. And you look at LeBron James and his situations as well. Those guys get what they want brought to them by their organizations. Is Kevin Durant a lesser player than Kawhi Leonard? Not in my book. He should be getting that same respect. Giannis gets certain levels of respect. Steph Curry, they all get a certain extra. And if you want to point out the extra on these teams, you can do it. But the point is, they'll get a friend, a brother, a cousin. Somebody is represented from their personal life on the team. Do you understand what I'm saying? The cousin, brother. And in this case, Kyrie is who KD wanted next to him. And also, from what I understand, the Nets did fire a coach that KD really appreciated and was close to without consulting him. And when you do stuff like that, you definitely ostracize the player, the superstar. And he's looking comparably at other situations. You say, okay, I signed a 4-year deal with this team, but I'm not getting the respect that I feel I deserve. Now, I'm looking at him signing that 4-year contract, and I just say, this is when they have a legitimate gripe. Because if I'm an owner, I'm like, all right, cool. You don't like the moves I make, fine. But that was just like, when did you sign this contract? Like a year ago? All of the stuff that you complained about was in place a year ago. So that would be my only gripe as an owner. I'm trying to figure out, if you knew we had a problem, why would you take my money and sign up for my years? And then it becomes a question where it's like, okay, well, is the player being disingenuous by taking the lockup 4 or 5 year deal? And this is where the answer is yes, because they must manipulate this way in an environment such as this, where the system itself makes it so that you have to have a relationship with a team. But then once you have you agree on that relationship, the teams now can trade you to other teams. I didn't sign my 5-year deal with the Detroit Pistons. I signed my 5-year deal with the Clippers, if I'm Blake Griffin. But now they're sending me off. You know what I'm saying? So that's why KD has to take his contract from Josiah and then proceed to leave after getting it if he didn't already want out anyway. It's because this is how he has to be able to lock up with it, a agreement with the NBA. So, as we always say, these contracts with the league with the teams need to end, and they need to start with the league. I am in the NBA, and I want a relationship with the NBA, not these individual teams. And I think that's the answer. It's somewhere nestled in stopping this process. And so that's what I see there, man. That's what I see there. You make it so that these players have that relationship with the NBA, and you don't have a guy like KD pretending he wants to be in Brooklyn when he really doesn't like how they operate. You know, simple as that. Or a guy like Kyrie who's trying to stay with Brooklyn even though he would love to leave too. He's trying to stay because he knows he can get that same deal. Or that's what he's trying to lobby for anyway. To get a deal of a long-term tenure. That's what I'm saying to you. Not the same deal. But the point is, if his relationship was with the league, he wouldn't have to have any relationship with the Nets at all. And the Nets wouldn't have to have any relationship with him. This would not even be a problem. Just go back to my Players Association and say, look, man, we need to negotiate me away from this particular assignment and assign me somewhere else. No different than you would do if you had a outsourced position as of something else, any type of professional. It's like, all right, this assignment's no good. Send me to another post. That's how you have to play it. I come from the security guard field, so I know that structure works in that lane. Y'all got to take the best parts of that and put it in yours. That's what I say, NBA. Take the best parts of what they do in the low-level security and apply it to your high billionaire sports entertainment conglomerate. That's what you need to do. Because as long as you keep having these relationships with these teams, if these teams can continue to break these relationships with these players at absolute random, then there's no reason for these players to try to have intimate relationships with the teams. See what I'm saying? And then you birth the player fan, because every fan knows that they are not going to be staying close to their team because their team's going to be replenishing different players every year. You might be conditioned for that if you're, say, I don't know, me. But if you're in this new generation, nah, not really. No. When superstars are basically the only thing that's plastered in my face, and they keep swapping teams every couple of years. So why am I going to be a fan of the Cavaliers? I'm going to be a fan of the Heat. I'm going to be a fan of the Cavaliers twice, and I'm going to be a fan of the Lakers in my entire lifetime if I'm 20 years old and I'm a LeBron James fan. That's been my relationship to the league. I don't know nothing about these teams. So why do I care that these players be attached to these teams if I'm a new age fan? I don't. I just need to know that I can see the player on whatever team he's on. He can jump from team to team every single year. We can see LeBron James in a different uniform every year. And you know what's going to happen? The ratings are going to swap to that team every year. Whatever the high ratings are, oh yeah, that's where Bron is. That's what they're watching. They don't care what uniform he's in. Doesn't matter. As long as he's wearing it. And that's just where we're at. So as the relationship with the NBA and these players continues to deteriorate, I just understand that nobody's wrong. Nobody's doing anything wrong. Nobody's being immature necessarily. People are frustrated because they're working in a system that does not work. They're trying to maneuver in a system that doesn't work. And they're frustrated because no one seems to understand that it doesn't work. No one seems to be able to speak out and effectively say, hey, we are trying to maneuver in impossible circumstances, and there's no way to get what we need out of the situation without maneuvering this way. There's no reason for Russell Westbrook to have a relationship with the Los Angeles Lakers in order for him to get his $47 million. Shouldn't be no relationship there. These two sides don't want their relationship. The only thing that's binding them is the fact that he's due his money. From where? From the league. Now, that it come from an owner, well, the money can still funnel the same way. You just gotta fudge it around a little bit to make it so that it flows in such a way that makes sense. You can do it. You can still get that money from the owners. It just won't come directly in that fashion into the contract with the team. That stuff, that's dead, man. That's dead. That's dead. These teams, unless you guys are going to fix it so that these teams are not able to trade these players as frequently, so that these relationships can be more binding, then we actually have real contracts. But if the contracts are a one-way street, they can trade me and I can't hardly get out of the situation just the same, is that made up in the difference? Do you understand what I'm saying? Is that made up in the price? Shouldn't I get an extra $1 million for that inability to be able to move while you have the ability to move? See, these type of things, I just don't know if they're addressed. If they are, then it would balance the conversation a bit. But looking at how the players are behaving, it doesn't seem like they seem to believe that it makes sense. Not in the way they're behaving. And so I don't jump to the conclusion that grown men are behaving like children just because other grown men are telling me that they are. No, I'm looking at what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing the system doesn't work. Kyrie wants his 5-year deal. Why? Because he's an NBA player that's better than most. And he should be able to stay in the league until he retires. He's great. He should be able to do that. Even if he's only playing 60 games a year. We want to see him play 60 games a year. That's the elephant in the room. If you tell me Kyrie's only going to play 30 games a year, guess what? I'm signing up to see Kyrie play 30 games a year. The NBA has set a schedule for these guys to play 82, and we respect that schedule. But it's not like we're going to say, oh man, we're only going to get to see Kyrie 10 times this year. Well, I guess I'm not going to watch those 10 games. No one's going to say that. Never. It's just about how you apply your power if you're these owners. Are you going to condemn these guys for having a life outside of the game? Or are you going to maneuver it so that these guys can feel more comfortable in your circumstance? And if they do, they're more likely to want to stay with you. This is another thing. I think it's just an elephant in the room, man. If you're warmer to people, they're probably going to feel more at home. So, I don't know. I think I've said all this stuff 106 times. I would love for the NBA to give us a trade of some sort so we can have some real stuff to break down. But all in all, it's just the frustration of being stagnant from day to day to day as a talking head. Stagnant in the sense that we can't discuss moves. So we discuss the fact that we can't make moves. So it is what it is, man. BDF 44. Look, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm waiting for something to happen just like everybody else. And the frustration level pretty high. I want to study these teams, and I just don't see the fruit in doing so. But yet, even now, it still makes no sense halfway through August to study these squads. They just aren't done. They're not going to be done until the big trades are made. So, until we see that, I'm going to be talking like this. So, I appreciate you guys for rocking with BDF 44. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.